Thank you, Mr. President. Mr. President, tonight the senator from Maryland, Senator Cardin, and I, and a bipartisan group of United States senators have introduced a resolution reaffirming the strong alliance between the United States and Australia. I'd like to speak about that just for a few minutes. I don't know what happened during last week's telephone call between the President of the United States and the Prime Minister of Australia, but I do know this: the people of the United States do not have better friends than the people of Australia. We're more than friends. As one Australian told me when our family lived there 30 years ago, "Well, we're mates all right," he said. "The English may be our ancestors, but you Americans are our cousins, first cousins." We started out the same kind of people, my Australian friend said, underprivileged, a long way from home, doing the same kind of thing, looking for a new life, found a hard life, hoped it would be a better one for our children. Each wave of new ones lifted up the last ones. A pioneering spirit in the countryside here, the Australian said, in America too. Even though they live down under on the other side of the world, for a century Australians have stood with us every time we were at war, and we have stood with them. Mr. President, the Senate's not in session.
The senator is correct. The Senate will be in order. Please take the conversations out of the chamber. The senator from Tennessee.
Thank you, Mr. President. Even though they live down under on the other side of the world for a century, Australians have stood with us every time we were at war, and we've stood with them. During World War II, when Australian troops were fighting in North Africa and Europe, and the Japanese were bombing Darwin 4 times a day, the United States came to the rescue. In 1992, Dick Cheney and I, as member of President George H.W. Bush's cabinet, traveled to Townsville in Australia to celebrate the 50th anniversary of the Battle of the Coral Sea, when the United States Navy stopped Japan's advance. Today, no two countries trust one another and cooperate in security arrangements more than Australia and America. We trade, we visit one another, and our students study in each other's universities. 30 years ago, our family lived an American dream, and we moved to Australia. We arrived on Australia Day, January 26, 1987, 199 years after the first fleet of English settlers sailed into Sydney Harbor. After 8 years of swiveling in the governor's chair, on the very day I was sworn out of office, my wife Honey and I and our 4 children flew to Sydney for 6 months off in the land down under. It was my wife's idea, an opportunity for a retreat from the merry-go-round of power and to discover what really was important. We rented a home in view of the most beautiful harbor in the world, bought an Australian car, and I learned to drive on the wrong side of the road. Our 4 children walked to Australian schools. We all sank deeply into the culture of our America's favorite cousins. I attended Chester A. Arthur Society meetings, where Australian Parliament members competed to show that they know more about United States history than American United States senators do. We spent the night in the South Wales bush. We saw 9-foot crocodiles in the Northwest Territory. We traveled by train to see the Melbourne Zoo and took a horseback trip across the Snowy Mountains. It didn't take long for us to understand what Mark Twain meant when he wrote, "When a stranger from America steps ashore in Sydney, the thing that strikes him is that it's an English city with American trimmings." Mr. President, we made friends then that exist to this day. Last year, 4 of those friends, the Australian Foreign Minister Bob Carr and the Australian Ambassador to the United States Kim Beazley and their wives, spent the weekend with us at our home outside the Great Smoky Mountains in Tennessee. We cherish those friendships and our country's relationship with Australia. It is always appropriate for the United States Senate to reaffirm the importance of that relationship, and I'm glad to join Senator Cardin and a long list of bipartisan United States senators who do that again today. To offer a more complete understanding of what makes Australians our favorite cousins, I ask consent to include in the record Chapter 30 from my book, 6 Months Off, written after our time in Australia.
Without objection.
Thank the President, and I yield the floor.
Wisconsin? Is that right? Wisconsin?
Mr. President.
The
Ask 30 seconds of recognition.
Yes.
Senator from Tennessee.
I ask consent to include in the record, following my remarks, the bipartisan resolution introduced by Senator Cardin and a number of other senators today.
Is there objection? Seeing none, so ordered.
Thank you very much.
The senator from Wisconsin.
Thank you.